This video is sponsored by McDonald's. It doesn't matter how much you eat, you're still going to feel empty inside. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Let's talk about the anime Bakemonogatari. So this show centers around a young girl who works at an office. Her escapades involve her stealing stationery from said office and hiding it up her vagina. When the day is done, she returns home, lifts up her skirt, and queefs the stolen goods onto the floor. Okay, that sentence has nothing to do with this show, but look at this promotional art! What the hell am I supposed to gather from this? So the show really starts by introducing us to the main character, Araragi, and this girl called Senjo Kahara. After a chance encounter, Senjo falls from the school stairs and gets caught by Agi, who discovers through this event that she is weirdly light. This then leads to Senjo becoming violent with Agi and saying if he tells anyone about her weight, she will make him regret it. However, this threat is done incredibly poorly as she then proceeds to discuss in great detail how she became so light. Now that might sound stupid, but she does this so Agi doesn't have any further discussions about it. That would be kind of smart if it wasn't for the fact that she mentions it was a crab that stripped her of her weight. No details after that, just a crab stripped her of her weight. I'm sorry, but how is that not designed to spark questions? Unless you had sex without protection, I'm going to get very curious about your crabs. I don't even think the main character was going to ask any further questions until then. At least give him the credit that he knows not to ask a girl about her weight. Senjo threatens Agi with stationery that she keeps on her person because, yeah, fear the protractor, and leaves by stapling his mouth. However, it's in doing this that we discover that Agi has superhuman healing as a side effect of him once being a vampire. And if I made that last statement sound more uninteresting than it should be, the only reason I do so is because the show does that as well. They just mention he was once a vampire and they move on. Why does no one explain anything properly? These characters are written like flat-pack furniture instructions. Now, I've been talking for a while, but I haven't actually explained what the plot is. Mostly because it took me a fuck of a long time to work out for myself. I think the best way to describe it is a supernatural slice of life show. Agi meets up with Senjo, the crab she was talking about was a spirit, and they work together to try and relinquish that spirit. Every episode works on the same basis of Araragi meeting a new demon and making it go away, interspersed with character interactions and normal conversation. Although when I say interdispersed, that implies the conversation parts are only occasional. In actual fact, it's the spirit fighting that only happens every so often, with the conversation parts being the main focus. Remember when I said that the start of this series involved Senjo and Agi having that confrontation? Well, in actual fact, the event happened maybe 6-7 minutes into the first episode. Before that happened, we were actually watching Agi talk to one of his friends about the school festival. Is the school festival important? No, it's briefly mentioned in the final episode as a bookend, but other than that, it's a completely pointless exchange that takes up a quarter of the episode. But that isn't the only time something like this happens. About 80% of the show is comprised of filler conversations where they talk about basically nothing. I can understand it taking on the role of being real conversations that real people would have, but real people are boring and so is listening to them talk. Either one character will thank Agi about saving them from a spirit in the last episode, or someone will make a cheap pervert joke. There's a worryingly high amount of pedophilic conversations. And by worryingly high amount, I of course mean more than 0. And these conversations aren't exactly made more interesting by the visuals. Maybe this was low budget, maybe it was artsy, but either way, I would rather be looking at an empty fridge. The animation occasionally tries, but for every moment it does look good, we get 20 moments like this. Out of nowhere, and seemingly with no rhyme or reason, they just have text flash up on screen instead of showing the characters talking. I wouldn't mind if they did something with it, maybe the font style changes based on how a character is feeling, or if the situation is high pressure, but no. They always use the same font. They're so proud they even tell you which font it is. HGP Mincho B, so glad I know that. I would have gone insane if I didn't know what font they used. Screw trying to develop your characters and making them interesting. The font is more important. That isn't the only time they have a confusing animation mix. Live action people are frequently used, which I just don't understand. People already hate the use of CGI in anime for being a poor blend of styles. How the hell is this any better? Along with weird lighting, odd camera angles, and the things I mentioned earlier, this isn't exactly something I enjoyed looking at. Real story time for a brief moment. I accidentally hit rewind halfway through watching an episode, and it took me 2 whole minutes before I realized it wasn't supposed to be playing in reverse and without sound. I thought the show was just being avant-garde as every other episode had been previously. So the story is a little weird and the animation is bad, but what about the characters? Well, being honest, With the exception of Araragi and Senjo Kahara, I had to look up the names of everyone else. They all have some kind of emotional moment during their story arcs, but they are few and far between. Each character's story arc is mostly separate from each other, but they won't have anything interesting to say once their demons are dealt with, not to mention the fact that each spiritual encounter is shamefully predictable. Boy finds a girl who has a problem and offers to help. He calls his friend for assistance who knows nothing. He then calls his other friend who knows everything. Do some kind of ritual to get rid of the spirit. Roll credits. How long did that take to explain? 10 seconds maybe? I mentioned about 4 different events that happened per standard story arc, so if each one lasted 5 minutes, you could do 1 spirit per episode, and I genuinely believe it's possible to tell these entire stories with just 1 episode. But these story arcs don't last 1 episode, they last 2 or sometimes 3! It's all padded out with those damn conversations! Imagine watching a story that you know could be finished quickly, but first, we have to watch some girl discuss whether or not she wears pants under her cycling shorts! We are trying to fight spirits! The demon fighting is usually interesting and some moments of conversation can be fine, amazing even, but with the amount of time it takes to get to any good moment in the show, they just feel wasted because you're so bored. There is no doubt in my mind that you could cut each story into 20-minute chunks and have it still make sense. I almost wish this show was about shoving staplers up your fanny, at least then someone might be deriving pleasure from this. If Bakemonogatari was just about the spirits and fighting them, this show would at least be okay, but because there's so much unnecessary talking between every single encounter and the fact that those conversations make up the majority of the show and are worthless, the whole thing is just boring. Coupled with the fact the animation is kind of crap and the characters feel half-baked most of the time, there is no way I could recommend this show. So if you excuse me, I need to buy some new pencils. The one I'm writing this script with smells weirdly of fish.